What if Anakin Skywalker did not have the Force but was still the chosen one? Folks, this will be a two-part story. This is part one. Hope you guys enjoy, and let's get right into it. Our story begins as the Clone Wars are beginning to erupt around the galaxy. For so many people, this war would change so much of their lives. The Jedi were sent into battle. People of thousands of worlds would live in fear of their homes being destroyed in the crossfire of clones and droids. It was chaos, spreading quicker than anyone had imagined. But for some, nothing really changed. For the people living in the Coruscant underworld, they would just continue living their dangerous lives in the darkness, having to worry more about what they were going to eat the next day than the Republic going to war. And one of these people was now 19-year-old Anakin Skywalker. Anakin had lived an interesting life, and as he tried falling asleep in his apartment that was considered to be pretty nice in an alleyway 67 levels deep, he remembered everything. Sleep didn't come easy for Anakin, as every night he relived it all. His life as a child was one of his fonder memories, all because of his mother. Although Anakin was born a slave, his mother gave his life a light that he hasn't seen in anyone or anything else. His mother always insisted that there was no father in his life. Anakin was simply born from a miracle of life. Anakin wasn't sure if he believed it, but either way, he never knew what it was like to have a real father. He grew up in slavery, but became fascinated with machines, and in turn, with pod racers. No human had ever won, much less completed a pod race, until Anakin did it at the age of 12, around 2 years after the Jedi showed up looking for hyperdrive parts in Watto's shop. Anakin met them, and they eventually got off-world without his help. He wasn't ready to pod race at that time, despite the Boonta Eve Classic lining up around the same time that the Jedi were there with that beautiful woman, Padme. Anakin wanted to race and help them get parts, but he wasn't ready. Maybe if he had Jedi powers, he would have been able to, but alas, they left, and Anakin won a race just 2 years later. He won more credits than he could ever have imagined before that day. And that day, those hours after he won, they were the greatest hours of his life. Of course, Watto legally got 50% of the winnings, but that wasn't enough for the slimy bug. Anakin bought the freedom for him and his mother, and then a ship for the both of them. They were going to get off-world, find a place with farms, an ocean, a warm climate, a life that wasn't full of sand and pain and scorching hot climates. But as they were about to leave Tatooine, the attack came. Pirates hired by Watto stormed the landing pad. They demanded that Anakin hand over the credits, and of course he did, for his mother. But then, the pirates shot her anyway. Anakin still remembered it like it was yesterday. At just 12 years old, just when life was at its best, all of it fell apart. He was dragged away as she died alone next to their ship. Part of Anakin wished they would have killed him too, but he was taken to Jabba's palace and put right back into a life of slavery. Anakin was placed onto a slave transport out of Tatooine and to the world of Nimban. He didn't speak or look at anyone. All he could think about was the life he was supposed to live, the life that was taken from him. It made him beyond angry, and that anger was what fueled him to stay alive and keep pushing as he lived his enslaved life on Nimban. Every day, as Anakin mined the dangerous minerals of Cortosis, he told himself there had to be a life after this, that there had to be something else. He was meant for more than this. And finally, after 3 miserable years, there was a raid on the mines. The Black Sun Syndicate, the main rivals to the Hutts, attacked the mines and were stealing the Cortosis. And this was where Anakin saw his opportunity. When the guards to the slave quarters were distracted, Anakin took a mining drill, attacking them with it. He didn't hold back, and the guards would be Anakin's first kills. He rallied the other slaves to help him break down the doors, and as the Black Sun fighters distracted the Hutt pirates, Anakin ran through the facility with determination. Finally, he reached the door, and seeing the sun for the first time in years nearly blinded him. But Anakin stumbled forwards. He felt blaster bolts whizzing past him. He heard fighters fighting and dying, but he just kept running. Finally, Anakin reached a landing pad where the Black Sun ship was taking off after a successful raid. Anakin grabbed a blaster from the ground, shot 5 Hutt pirates on his way, and Anakin jumped off of a cliff ledge, reaching for the open ramp for the Black Sun ship, but he missed. Luckily, a Black Sun member reached down, laughing at Anakin, saying that the kid really has grit, and Anakin was pulled onto the ship as it lifted off the ground. Anakin was thrown hard to the floor, surrounded by the criminals. One of them, clearly a leader, told Anakin that the Black Sun is looking for new members now that a handful of them were just killed in this raid. He can either join the Black Sun, or they'll just throw him back down. Anakin had no choice. He would join the Syndicate. At this point, 16-year-old Anakin was scrawny, but strong in both his mind and fighting ability. He never slept much on Nimbon. Other slaves were always picking fights for extra scraps of food. So, Anakin had learned to fight, and with the Syndicate, Anakin joined it knowing that he would take the first possible opportunity to escape. He didn't want any part of a life with these pirates and slavers. These were the same type of people that had killed his mother. So, after a few months, Anakin was part of a smuggling operation to the Coruscant underworld. He and 3 others were smuggling coaxium, a highly explosive substance, to an important buyer. And as their transport entered the underworld, Anakin would secretly activate the coaxium, then jump out of the transport right as it exploded. It looked like a regular old accident, one that wasn't exactly uncommon in this line of work, and it allowed Anakin to start a new life, far from the life that he dreamed of in those hours of freedom with his mother, but still, a new life, a free life. And the first week here trying to adjust to living without a cage around him was a blur of noise and neon lights. The air was thick with exhaust. He slept wherever he could, and down here, people lived stacked on top of each other. Rhodians were curled up beside broken terminals, families were patched in tents under leaking pipes, gangs were carving out territory block by block. Everyone was tired, hungry, desperate. Everyone looked past him like he was just another stray kid swallowed up by the levels. The surface above, it all felt like a myth. By the second week here, Anakin started to understand the rhythm of the underworld. Survival depended more on who you avoided than who you knew. He learned where food vendors were tossing scraps, which alleys were controlled by gangs, how quickly a single misstep could get you stabbed. He would also learn about the surface from overheard conversations. People talked about clean air, steady jobs, real sunlight, Jedi. But Anakin had to figure that up there, corruption just blended in better. Down here, nobody bothered pretending. And soon, the underworld would begin to truly test him. Anakin tried taking a job hauling scrap for a Trandoshan, only to be completely cheated out of pay. He was jumped outside of a bar, and escaped only because he fought like he had on Nimbon, using the same anger he felt when his mother died, using desperation to escape. Anakin practiced climbing support beams, slipping through narrow halls where bigger men couldn't follow. He learned how to disappear. After a month, Anakin was adapting, and he knew that if he truly wanted to make a name for himself and get enough credits for a real life, he would need an advantage down here. It would be nice to have the Jedi powers everyone whispered about, but Anakin had other advantages. He was the best mechanic that he knew, and so he began putting together some gear to help him move around. The parts were not easy to find, but Anakin would find a scrapyard, and he would offer to work in exchange for parts instead of credits. The owner of the yard, a man called Lenny, would accept this. Anakin reminded Lenny of himself, and he could tell this boy would be a legitimate help around here. Lenny's scrapyard was the first place on Coruscant where Anakin felt like he had room to really breathe. When he mentioned wanting a way to move through the underworld faster than any speeder, Lenny laughed at the idea, but he would help Anakin put together this vision. The two of them dug through piles of junk and pulled apart old droids for micro-thrusters, compressed gas cylinders from mining tools, and rebuilt armored gauntlets into twin grappling launchers. They needed cables, and these cables were high strength and razor thin. Anakin would trim, weld, rewire all of the junk into something he thought to be quite brilliant. Lenny asked what Anakin called these grappling machines. Anakin called them omnidirectional mobility gear. Lenny chuckled, suggesting they just call it ODM gear. It's shorter, easier. Anakin finally finished the dual-handed gear, and the first test would nearly knock him unconscious. He fired a grappler into a pipe, then launched himself forward, but he slammed against the wall so hard that even Lenny winced. But Anakin just laughed. For the first time in years, he laughed. The feeling was unfamiliar, but wonderful. Anakin felt so free, and he spent hours every day practicing with these newfound machines, and after just a few weeks, Anakin's crashing turned into legitimate flying around. He learned how to spiral, to twist midair, cancel out dangerous momentum with a burst from the hip jets. He stole vibroblades that were perfect for tight spaces. His movements were a blur, as Lenny watched Anakin use the grapplers to swing, thrust, land, and workers in the underworld started to notice a shadow that was zipping across the highest support beams, something too fast and too controlled to just be random, and rumors would form before he even realized he was becoming something. And soon, Anakin flew between towers like gravity didn't even matter, gliding through vents and open shafts with elite speed and precision. For the first time in years, something inside of Anakin loosened. He was moving with a feeling of freedom, and this new gear and abilities would turn Anakin from a regular old street rat to one of the more well-known bandits in the underworld. For 2 years, Anakin would use these abilities and his reputation, even building up a small group who worked with him on some hired jobs. His main 2 partners in crime were a Mirialan man called Heron and a Nautolan woman called Isabel. The 3 of them worked well together, and Anakin even designed some ODM gear for the 2 of them as they moved through the underworld, stealing Republic credit shipments, taking out gangs, doing all sorts of bounties for the local police force. Things were good, and for the first time since Tatooine, Anakin felt like he had real friends. He was still deep inside of a mental shell that he was forced to build up over his years as a slave, but Isabel and Heron certainly helped to bring him out of it. Their time together would continue. Anakin would get closer to them, especially to Isabel, and eventually they would land one of the biggest jobs of their lives, a job that would give them enough credits to live up on the surface, something that seemed impossible for so long. The job was given to them through all sorts of heavily encrypted channels. The organizer of it was unknown, and that was fine, as long as they get paid eventually. All they have to do is kill a Jedi. Simple as that. A Jedi called Qui-Gon Jinn, the same Jedi Anakin met long ago on Tatooine. Anakin had fond memories of the man. He was kind and wise, but if killing him was the key to a better life, so be it. The bandits led by Anakin didn't know the history of it all. Qui-Gon has been a thorn in the side of the Sith ever since Naboo. Without Anakin, the Battle of Naboo was altered greatly. In the end, the Republic won, but it took longer than anticipated, and because Qui-Gon was stuck on Tatooine for longer than he had hoped, Mace Windu and Depa Billaba were sent to Naboo. The 2 of them ended up fighting Maul, and although Depa was killed, Mace Windu defeated the Sith Lord, and began to understand that the Sith have indeed returned, and with Qui-Gon surviving, he ended up agreeing to take the council seat that belonged to Depa Billaba. As time went on, Qui-Gon had urged the Jedi to step away from politics, and day by day, inch by inch, they began to do so, but it wasn't quite enough. As the Clone Wars were getting started, the Jedi were asked to participate, and Qui-Gon was leading a group that was pushing for the Jedi not to fight in the war. He was more than an irritant to the Sith, and so Darth Sidious worked through the channels of Coruscant to hire some well-known bandits. And now, we are back in present day, as Anakin's memories of his rough life come to an end inside of his apartment. He knew the mission was going to be dangerous. Part of him wanted to call it off. Fighting a Jedi was far different than fighting the local gangs down here. But more than anything, he wanted to bring Heron and Isabel a life on the surface. It's something Isabel dreamed of ever since they met. So, Anakin was determined to get it done. He will kill the Jedi Qui-Gon and live a better life with the reward. When morning came, Anakin, Heron, and Isabel made their way to the upper levels of the underworld. Chancellor Palpatine has assigned Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi to go and meet with a supposed separatist spy who apparently knows where the battle droid control room resides. With this information, they could end the war immediately. Of course, it was fake. Palpatine was sending them to be killed by the bandits. It would be made to look like a separatist setup, and the Jedi would be forced into the war. And before long, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan would slip into the underworld. But even before reaching the rendezvous point, Qui-Gon felt that something was off. Obi-Wan felt it too, but Qui-Gon said they must push forward. When they arrived to the meeting spot, the ambush would hit quickly. 3 figures dropped from the rafters, cables whipping down as they flew in. Isabel and Heron came in first, spinning in tight spirals, blades flashing around, and Anakin followed a heartbeat later, firing a grappling line right into a support beam, slingshotting himself forward with Jedi-like speed. The Jedi barely ignited their sabers and dodged the first attacks. Obi-Wan pivoted, blocking Isabel's blades as she darted around him. Their blades could withstand a few lightsaber strikes. Qui-Gon took Heron's downward strike, and then the 2 Jedi leapt out of the meeting zone, darting down into the narrow alleyways. But this was perfect for the bandits. Isabel and Heron used their gear like extensions of their limbs, slicing through the air, forcing the Jedi into constant movement. Anakin launched, appearing from every angle, but the Jedi were smart and fast. Heron and Isabel attempted to corner Qui-Gon from both sides. They fired their grapples to opposite walls, snapping the cables as they dove towards him. Qui-Gon stopped between the converging lines, and with a single sweeping strike, he severed both cables in mid-air. This sent Heron and Isabel crashing through the window of an abandoned warehouse, bodies tumbling across the floor. Qui-Gon followed them inside, but before he could reach them, a blur of motion slammed into Obi-Wan from above. Anakin kicked Kenobi square in the chest, sending him sprawling down into the same area. Anakin then stood over Obi-Wan, but when he looked up, Qui-Gon was already standing over Isabel and Heron. Qui-Gon told Anakin to stand down, or his friends will face the consequences. Anakin froze. He looked at Isabel's pained expression. He knew they'd lost for the first time. So, he let the vibroblades drop, and Qui-Gon extinguished his saber. But then he told Anakin that their existence is not a secret. The Jedi, him especially, have become aware of their presence in the underworld. Qui-Gon admitted that he finds them to be fascinating, and he took this mission in hopes of finding them. Anakin didn't understand. Why would the Jedi be interested in him and his team? Qui-Gon told Anakin that he moves like a Jedi. He has the instincts of a Jedi, but he does not wield the Force. It's fascinating. Qui-Gon asked who his parents were. Anakin shook his head, saying his mother was just a normal woman, a slave killed the moment she was free. Qui-Gon apologized for his loss, then asked about Anakin's father. Anakin wasn't sure why he was even talking to this man. There was just something comforting about him. He reminded Anakin of his time with his mother, and he told Qui-Gon that he never had a father. He was born from nothing. How lucky of him. And for some reason, Qui-Gon froze. Obi-Wan felt a shift inside of him, and Qui-Gon finally realized who this man was. This was the same slave boy from Tatooine, the one without a father. Qui-Gon remembered that day when he learned of Anakin's birth. He remembered thinking of the Chosen One prophecy, but he thought for certain that the Chosen One must wield the Force. And yet, after all these years, against all odds, Anakin Skywalker was once more in front of him, the only human to ever finish a pod race, now the most successful bandit in the underworld. Qui-Gon thought of the prophecy of the Chosen One. It said that a Chosen One will be born through the Force, and through him, ultimate balance of the Force shall be restored. Qui-Gon realized there was no mention of the Chosen One needing to be a Force user, so he looked to Anakin and his friends, and he made them an offer. Come with him back to the Jedi Temple. Learn to fight. Learn to find purpose in a galaxy that is in need of heroes. A better life awaits them, if they choose it. Anakin looked at Isabel and Heron. They deserved this. He wanted this for them. It was a way out of the underworld. They gave Anakin a small nod, and so Anakin agreed. The journey to the surface was something they'd waited years for, and once they were used to the natural sun, they saw the beautiful towers, thousands of speeders flying through the air, the millions of homes, lights, shops. It was all so overwhelming. And then, the Jedi Temple came into view, perhaps the largest building in the entire planet. And then their speeder would be flown into the large temple hangar. As they landed, Qui-Gon told them to wait here. He must alert the temple guards that he's brought underworld warriors here. Qui-Gon would disappear through the exit door with Obi-Wan, and Isabel would tell Anakin that now is their chance. They can steal this Jedi speeder, sell it for enough credits to make a life for themselves. Blending in here above the underworld will be easy. The Jedi could never find them. Anakin was reluctant to go against the Jedi again, but Isabel hugged him, saying it's everything they've ever been wanting. This is their best opportunity. They don't want to be Jedi. They don't want to be anything related to Jedi. Anakin glanced back to the hangar door and said, fine, they'll do it. He quickly got the speeder started, breaking through the wiring panel, and the three of them got on board, taking off through the door as maintenance workers scrambled to stop them. Heron and Isabel grabbed a few extra things from the hangar that could be sold for more credits, and Anakin would fly them down into the streets as they got to work on selling. In the hangar, Qui-Gon secretly watched them go. This was a personal test for him. If Anakin truly is the Chosen One, they will find each other again. Down on the surface, Anakin, Isabel, and Heron would sell their speeder, and were now flush with credits. Anakin would tell the two of them that he's going to go and search for some lodging for the night, and the two of them should go and find some good food to eat. They would separate, and Anakin cracked a small smile, but there was one thing eating away at him. They never completed the mission to kill Qui-Gon for their secret buyer. Anakin hoped that they would just be able to disappear from whoever the buyer was, and he would secure a place to sleep for the night. But as he ran to his friends, something was wrong. Down a darker street, where his friends were supposed to meet him, there were trails of blood. Anakin followed the trails, and at the end of the alleyway, he found a tall, skinny woman holding 2 red lightsabers, standing over the bodies of Isabel and Heron. Anakin's friends were dead, slaughtered by this woman. This was Asajj Ventress, assigned by Sidious to kill the 3 bandits that failed to complete their mission. Ventress already killed 2 of them, then turned to Anakin, saying it wasn't personal. Anakin's ears were ringing. He was seeing red. The anger that was hiding inside of him was unlocked, the same anger he felt when his mother was killed. And as Ventress began moving towards him, Anakin activated his ODM gear, flying right for her. He shot upwards in a blur, dodging Ventress's opening strikes by inches. She pivoted sharply, dragging one saber in a sweeping arc meant to slice him from the air, but Anakin twisted mid-flight, thrusters flaring, kicking off a column, diving at her with his vibroblades drawn. Anakin screamed out as he swung around her in a tight circle, boots skimming the ground before he shot upward again, slicing into her shoulder. Ventress tracked him fast, sabers slicing through his cable, forcing him into free fall, but Anakin used the drop, hitting the ground in a low slide that carried him under her next strike. As he passed beneath her, he dragged the blade right across her ankle. She roared, hurling a force push that sent Anakin skidding across the courtyard. He rolled away, but he was already rewiring his gear on instinct. Ventress sprinted towards him, ready to take his head. Anakin fired a single grappler right past her, embedding it in a spire behind her back. As she closed in, he yanked, whipping himself forward with all the force stored in his line. He dodged her downward strike, spinning twice, and in the final rotation, he drove both vibroblades right into her torso. Ventress gasped, collapsing to the ground. Anakin ripped the blades free. The adrenaline drained out of him in an instant. He fell to his knees beside the bodies of Heron and Isabel. Ventress was dead, but so were his friends. He'd been too late to save them, and Anakin would see the logo of the Separatists on Ventress's armband. That was who was at fault here. The Separatists killed his friends. In the Jedi Temple, Qui-Gon Jinn would soon be alerted that a man was looking for him at the main gates. Qui-Gon would go to Anakin, and Anakin would tell Qui-Gon that he wants to learn to fight. He wants to kill the Separatists, every last one of them, for getting him and his friends involved in this war, for killing them. And finally, Anakin would be brought to the Jedi Council, where Qui-Gon would reveal his hunch to the Jedi. He believes Anakin Skywalker, this man without the Force, to be the Chosen One, and he believes Anakin resembles a path to fighting in this war. It doesn't have to be Jedi. It can be people like Anakin who want to fight back, along with the clones. The Council stared at Anakin, feeling how the Force surrounds him, but is not flowing inside of him. Mace Windu was secretly quite frustrated. After killing Maul many years ago, Mace secretly believed himself to be the Chosen One. He thought it was disgraceful for Qui-Gon to come here with a non-Force user and insist that he is the Chosen One. But Qui-Gon would talk about Anakin's abilities and how the Force has brought them together, and he would ask to train Anakin to fight instead of he himself having to fight. And so, while the Council didn't exactly think Anakin could be the Chosen One, they would agree to let Qui-Gon pursue this path. Perhaps the Anakin can give the Republic an advantage in war with his fighting style. He has already defeated a Sith assassin, and it was better to have his abilities in the hands of the Republic than in the hands of the enemy. Qui-Gon thanked the Masters, and after Anakin left the room, Qui-Gon looked to all of them with the utmost seriousness, as he said that one thing is for certain: he is the Chosen One. And folks, that is part 1 of our story. Part 2 should be released tomorrow, so long as everything goes right. I've pretty much got it all mapped out, but yeah, let me know what you want to see in part 2. And in case you didn't pick it up, this is a pretty much direct homage or just story related to or involving Attack on Titan, a show that I finally got around to watching after many years of my friends being like, you need to watch this, and me being like, I don't know, I'm not a big anime fan. But folks, Attack on Titan is one of the greatest things I've ever watched in my life. And so I decided to introduce some aspects of it in this two-part story. Of course, the ODM gear. Huge inspiration. Yeah, I really like the story so far, and I think it's gonna have a fun ending. Hope you guys enjoy this part one. Let me know what you want to see in part two, and maybe I can make some adjustments or tweaks depending on what y'all think. But yeah, really fun. Attack on Titan. If you haven't seen it, couldn't recommend it more. Great show. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the part two video.